Well, this video was supposed to have been done probably like a week ago, but it did not go as planned. Of course, none of them ever go as planned. Instead, what happened was the weather, of course, but an actual like positional. I wasn't sitting the way I was supposed to sit, slouching too much, spike through the head, dizziness, migraine, for 2 days. Not the weathery migraines, which are no big deal, but also I didn't want to be on camera. I have terrible skin. It's being especially angry lately. I couldn't do much, but because the dizziness wasn't, it was very particular, and it was the kind of thing where as long as I was watching a bunch of talking heads, I wasn't so bad, actually. I could read. Well, there was a little bit of a time where words were very blurry. And so one of the things that happened was really what I thought set it off was I looked from my iPad to a point in the distance, which was actually my roommate. And that seemed to be the inciting incident. But later, my roommate pointed out that ability to focus could be the other way around, right? So, cool. Anyway, point is it was harder to focus my eyes. So it was easier to watch television as long as the television wasn't really moving too much. And of course, we have things like audio description, and I close my eyes for whenever a camera pans. Sometimes I'll skip basically action sequences, which sucks. I mean, sometimes I listen to like who's defeating who, and when I first started all this, the first time I wanted to watch a superhero movie, like I really wanted to watch Black Panther, and so I went to my friend's house and he was describing everything that I couldn't watch, and so he would go fight scene, fight scene, fight scene, and I was like, no, I want to know who's winning, I want to know who's whatever. And so that's when I learned that there were some things that you just really need audio description for, and you can't actually like rely on your friends. Anyway, I mean, fight scene, fight scene, fight scene is always going to be like something that I make a joke about, but and it's something that I'm going to think in my head every time I watch a fight scene. But sometimes you need somebody to tell you what's actually going on. So I ended up watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and then when I felt like my eyes were focusing enough to like actually read, I was reading a lot of like horror. So I felt like I was going between this like late 1950s, early 1960s, like, you know, gorgeous aesthetic to horror. I was doing horror all over the place. I'll get to that in a second. And it was really interesting. Anyway, so I thought to myself, why not, you know, look nice, hide how awful my skin is. It didn't work. Like, mostly I just feel like everything's really caked on how dry and angry my skin is. But, you know, hey, you're the one who has to look at me, and you know what? You could go all audio on this too if you wanted to. So, but it made me feel a little better after quite a few days of bleh. Yeah. So I've been watching all these things. I've been having a really good time. The show has been really interesting to me because it's Amy Sherman Palladino. I'm very familiar with Gilmore Girls. My kid and I used to watch it all the time. We used to live in a really small town. I was a single parent. My kid was very bookish, you know. My mother really hated that I watched it because I think she thought that I thought that she was Emily, which is hilarious. I think my mother thinks that I think that she's colder than I think that she is, which is really interesting. But she would never talk about it. She would just get really angry when the show was on. When I lived with her and my kid was really little. It's like, if you just talked to me about these things, I think you would feel a lot better, but she never did. And instead, my kid and I just have like a couple of things where like every time it snows and we both see the snow because we don't live together anymore, we watch one of the episodes and, just a couple of things. And so there are some things about the show that have not aged well, and at the time wasn't that great either. And so I've been a little off put. I've heard some things about the show, and now that I've watched it, I don't necessarily agree with them. As a queer person, I have a queer person who grew up when I grew up, which was the early 90s, not the late 90s post Ellen, but right pre Ellen. And being the only person in my class who was outed. I used to say I was the only person who was out, but it is true that I was outed, and I did not even really understand what that concept was because I had no frame of reference. I did not know what outing was. I didn't realize it had happened to me. I didn't see it as being any different than any other rumors that went around and people telling other people's business. To me, that was just high school into, middle school into high school, honestly. So there have been a lot of things that I've heard about the show before I watched it about outing and how queer characters are handled from the perspective of like the main character who is heterosexual. And I was like, wow, as a person who was outed, I don't necessarily agree. There's a difference between fucking up and outing someone. And there's a difference between fucking up in a way that outs people, and there's a fucking up that gets somebody outed, I guess. I have fucked up and outed someone. It is something that I still feel embarrassed and upset about. I've made my apologies. Some people don't talk to me over it. Some people were still very good friends. Like, I have made my mistakes as a person who just did not really grow up with that concept. Sort of understood it, but not really for myself. Didn't really understand. Anyway, I've made my mistakes and my apologies. Have never repeated a mistake, but have fucked up in other ways that also involve outing, which really sucks. Really sucks. Anyway, as a queer person, I was very, very much like, all of the things I heard about this show, I don't necessarily, I don't agree with some of the more hateful things I've heard about the show, or the more strident or strict things. I truly believe that when people mess up, we don't have to forgive them. And we don't have to, interact with them anymore at all, of course. But also, people fucking up is a part of life. And I think that I've spent a couple years watching people not only make mistakes, but not make mistakes and still get thrown to the wolves in my own communities. And I'm done with it. I'm absolutely, positively done with not having grace for people who try their best. Believe me, when someone doubles down, I'm done with them. But when they don't, when they apologize and never repeat a mistake, I'm ready to watch them make a new mistake, which has nothing to do with it, which is about being human. I'm going to make a million mistakes in my life, and I'm going to hate every single one of them, and I'm going to be miserable and embarrassed. And I'm going to think about them at night when I can't sleep. And then that's going to make me not sleep even more. And it's going to be horrible. And I don't care. Well, I care. But I'm going to know that that is a huge part of being human. No one can live in perfection. And the only thing that we can do is make amends in the best way that we know how. And the most important of which is to not repeat our mistakes as best we can. This has been on my mind a lot lately, like before the show even. And so that is where I have come down. I've felt like I've always been there, but I also know that it hasn't always come off that way to people. They have seen me as very much like one and done. And it's because it's taken me like 4 or 5 times to actually get up the guts to speak to you. So, in case you're wondering why I have some people in my life anymore and some I don't, the difference is whether or not they doubled down. Or they were malicious. Horribly malicious. Or they let their fear override their ability to apologize. It's personal stuff. Hey, I'm getting really personal here. Let's talk about some books instead. So I've been reading a lot of horror. Okay. Today, when I'm recording this, is the 19th. We're probably getting really close to the 20th now because of the fact that I stayed up really, really late, early, whatever, reading a book. The reason for this is because NetGalley and I have had a very chill relationship lately, and I guess we shouldn't have. So since the pandemic, blah, 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 I've been having problems reading as quickly as I used to, as closely as I used to. I need to take more breaks, etc. The result is that I read a lot more slowly than I used to, and I take a lot of breaks. Like, between almost every chapter breaks if the book isn't, like, pulse-poundingly fast. So, I see that my next book is like July 19th. It comes out July 19th, and this was like the middle of June, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to stop focusing on NetGalley. I have stuff to do. I'm writing my own book, and I've been taking like a lot of thought breaks with it because I'm in that part of the book where I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to present it because it's personal. It's a memoir, and there are a lot of moving parts that I need to deal with. And on top of that, there are some books I need to read for it, some movies I need to watch. So I'm like, I'll do all those things. I'll read my book club book. My book club book took longer than expected. I'm having problems reading physical books because during all of the beginning of the pandemic, the first year or so, I was reading almost exclusively online. Okay. So the weeks are passing faster than I expected. I'm like, oh crap, I've got this book, The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. Very excited to read it. But I've never read The Island of Dr. Moreau. I've only seen like one crappy movie. So I'm going to read the book really fast. It was like 90 pages, maybe tops, once you take out all the page breaks. Because I found an ebook that was just no page breaks, just go. I'm like, okay, I'll read that. It is a classic, so it's very wordy in that style. So it's a little slower than I expect. Meanwhile, I've got all these graphic novels on Hoopla that I had taken out in June that were about to expire. So I'm trying to get those done, which is fine. I knock them out very fast because I'm not very much a dwell on the art kind of a person. I go from like word box to word box, taking the art as a whole, each panel, relatively quickly, unless there's like something that really catches my eye or something that I really want to dwell on. But it's the time that I'm usually reading, and then on top of that, I'm like really into whatever show I was watching before, Mrs. Maisel, and so on. And of course, battling on and off migraines with the weather that we've been having lately. So I finished the book. I start The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. It is not what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, but the beginning is very slow. Now you have to remember, this is all based on what is a very quick novella. And it is, for a classic, very action-oriented. So I'm like, okay, this is a slower pace. It's introducing all the characters. Cool. I read one of the graphic novels that was a book that, a title I have always sort of put off because the cover was really off-putting to me. It was horror. It's called like Ice Cream Man. And I thought, oh, what if it's got like pedophile elements? I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is that it's horror. It looks creepy. Generally speaking, that would usually be my jam, but I don't know anything about it. I don't know who that author is. But the big edition just came out. It's called the Sundae edition. Get it? Sundae. And it covers like a whole bunch of stuff. So if I take it out, if I use it as my very last or close to last checkout for the month, because Hoopla limits you in how many checkouts you can take per month, then I can check this title out and I can feel like I didn't waste a checkout if I don't like it. So I take it out. It turns out it's great. It is a horror anthology. It has a very, I don't want to say Twilight Zone, but there is a Twilight Zone feel to it. Tales from the Crypty, in that there is one character who feels like he is introducing things, but he is also part of it too. So I want to say Erie, Indiana, but that's not right either because I always want to say Erie, Indiana, even though I haven't watched it since I was a child. And I start getting really into it, and I take out, I used my roommate's account. She doesn't care, but who knows if the library does. I switched accounts, took out all the rest of the books, read all of them instead. Oops. And then, but it's fine because I have plenty of time to finish The Daughter of Dr. Moreau before the 19th when it comes out today. No big deal. So I read 7 volumes. And, you know, I'm happy. It's really cool. It's sort of set like an anthology in that, like, the only connecting characters is this, you know, this ice cream man who's like always around, but this town is like devolving because he is there into like madness and creepiness. And if you don't like bugs, you're not gonna like this. But I actually found it to be less gross than most things, but more interesting. And the stories are like sort of all over the place in terms of like what it is, because some of them don't feel like horror at all. One of them felt uplifting almost. Like, it's really neat. Was not expecting it to be like I must have read the description at one point and went, anthology, I don't know how I feel about that. I like stories that are connected. These are very connected. The connection is loose enough that one day Netflix will pick it up and decide that they want to do something with it, and they'll make it a tighter story, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I love the tighter story, but it is fine the way it is. It's cool to read all these different things, and then sometimes you're like, oh, I just want a little bit more connection, and then you get a little bit more connection, and then you're like, oh, but I really want it like just a standalone weird, and then you get that too. Anyway, so I've got like 4 days to finish The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, which is fine because I read like 20% in like 2 days, 3 days maybe. which is still very slow for me. But it's just the pacing of the book. It's very lush. It's very beautifully written. Still good. Like, I'm still good on time. I mean, the book is good, but also I'm very good on time. And I want to be able to make sure that I'm matching the pace of the book. I don't want to speed read a book that's meant to be lush. And then NetGalley, like 2 or 3 days before, and they must have done it like Friday night and I must have seen it Saturday or something. They must have done one last run through Sarah Gailey? Galley? Gailey? There's an I in there. But then I always want to say Galley because the author's name on Twitter is like Sarah Gallifrey, which I think is a pun. But like, then I'm like, it's Gallifrey. No, who cares? I mean, I care about names. You know how much I care about names. But the book is just like home. It looks so cool. And not only is it out the 19th, but unlike Daughter of Dr. Moreau, it has a pull date of the 19th. Now, NetGalley, if you open the book, they will not cut you off before you're done it, even if you open it like the 18th. I do not trust this though, because their app is real weird. It's like, hey, you have a shelf. Your shelf is going to be filled with things that you've read, not read. We're going to give you like these dates of how long you have to read it. They have nothing to do with when the book gets pulled. And it's a really janky app. It makes no sense. So once I start reading a book and it's close to the date that it's going to be pulled, I try to read it as fast as possible. So I was going to read Just Like Home, finish it tonight, and then just feel bad about not getting the video out on the drop date. I'm still technically not getting the video out on the drop date, but that's fine. I was gonna get it out on the 20th. You can see that my migraine's getting worse because I can see my eyes are like closing and closing. It's fine. I feel fine, just a little bit of pressure right here. Anyway, I start this book. It's creepy. It's cool. I go to bed. This was like 2 days ago. Last night, I start the book and I'm like, if I don't finish it, that's okay. I'll just finish it and then do the video tonight, like tonight. But no, I stayed up till almost 11 in the morning finishing that book because it was so good. It is creepy, scary, all the way through until the last page, like till the last sentence. It is creepy, scary. You don't know what's going on, but you are constantly given information enough to feel like you're having everything revealed to you. So it's not like, one of those things where it's like, I don't know what's going on this whole time and I'm bored with it. You'll not be bored. You're constantly being fed information. And despite that, there's always so much more to know. It is the story of a woman who is coming home to her dying mother, and they're not close, and she has not stepped foot in her home for years, since she was 17 and a half and kicked out. And she's there to, basically get everything in order. And I mean, I don't even want to give them tiny bit of it away. I'm mad that I knew anything going in, because the less you know, the more there is to learn, and learning what's going on is the second best part. The first part is how creepy it stays. It is hard to keep a book consistently creepy. I really truly believe that. It is really hard to do that. Books are so different from movies. Movies have music to play on on your senses. There's so much going on in terms of, how to keep someone's attention with movies, because you're playing on two different senses. With books, how do you keep somebody in? Well, this could be a masterclass, because I was freaking the whole time. I was interested, I was invested, and I felt for this character. When she was making decisions that I wouldn't necessarily make, I didn't care, because I totally understood. Even if I totally didn't understand, I was willing to wait to find out why, because I felt that I was going to eventually understand, and that's true. Brilliant, brilliant, scary, creepy book. Loved every page of it. Very glad that I read it. Especially glad that I feel like there's no way that the NetGalley app is going to take it away from me. Not thrilled that I got it at the last second, but that's just somehow, sometimes I think what happens is NetGalley does like a bunch of approvals. They see how many people got to it in time. They think, oh God, we really wanted more. And so they do that last minute thing. My dream is that they looked at my account and said, this woman, she gets her shit done. Anyway, I'll be done with The Daughter of Dr. Moreau this week, and I will be talking about it versus The Island of Dr. Moreau in my next video, I think. Although I don't know that it's really a versus. I don't know that it's going to end up that way. So that is what I wanted to talk about. And yeah, I need to go eat. And hope that some of this pressure is just from the fact that it is my dinner time. Do you like the look? I feel like I did okay for somebody who kind of rushed at it. My hair is getting grayer every day. It's harder to tell in this light, but underneath is surprisingly gray. I'm kind of excited about that. I kept thinking my hair wasn't growing, and then I look at all the gray underneath and I'm like, oh, you are growing, good for you.